While a refreshing change of scenery provides hope for the show, but is quickly apprehended by another horrible tragedy.
Look away, 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 look away.
Hey guys, camera for Series Unfortunate Events, Season 1, Episode 3, The Reptile Room, Part 1. I was definitely interested for this episode, mainly because the fact that I really didn't know where we were going to go from here. Well, I did, of course, because of the books, but because of the way that Episode 2 ended, I really didn't know what was going to happen. We knew that we were going to go to Uncle Monty, and because every episode split into 2 parts, I really didn't know what was going to happen in this episode. And I will definitely say, I don't think this was on par with the first 2 episodes, because it definitely was more of I wouldn't say a stall episode, but as I said, it provided a lot more hope. But the story in general was still very compelling, and I still very liked where this episode went. There definitely were a few more problems than I have with the first 2 episodes, but let's get into this episode because overall I did really enjoy it. And we start off when we see Lemony. He's dedicating his work to Beatrice, who did not live forever. I love that little dark joke right there. The show does such a great job with dark humor, and that's a very good example of that. But the broken-hearted crocodile is a rare species of reptile that Lemony tells us the viewer about and advises them to look away from the story he has to tell. So, Poe's driving the Baudelaires to Dr. Montgomery, we find out his name, estate, and admits that he should have been their guardian all along. He figures out that Count Olaf won't be able to find them way out because of where the estate is. There's no way he'll be able to locate them. Now, they're constantly terrified by the fact that Count Olaf is coming back at them. And you definitely get the sense that the Baudelaires are not really the most hopeful at this point because, you know, they were excited about Count Olaf. They realized that he was a terrible person. They don't really feel like Dr. Montgomery is going to be any different. So they turn off at Lousy Lane. They pull up to the estates, and Monty then greets them, offers coconut cream, and he's completely different from Count Olaf immediately just by his more welcoming type demeanor that he has. I mean, he's a lot more, he's a lot more helpful towards them. He seems to care a lot more about their well-being. He's offering them coconut cream cake, saying that they're going to go to the movies a lot. I mean, this guy seems like he is everything that the Baudelaires will need right now, and they go inside, and he even offers Sonny a raw carrot. I mean, this guy has everything, really. And he then assures Poe that the Baudelaires won't need anything from Poe while they're in his care. He will dedicate himself to their safety and care, and that he's, they're okay. He doesn't really have to worry about them. So he assures them that he doesn't care about the Baudelaire fortune since he's financially well off. And immediately, this guy is just completely different from Count Olaf. And I really like seeing that. And once Poe leaves, we find out with the Monty that he's actually not happy with Poe since he's the reason the children were put with Olaf in the first place, that, he was supposed to be with them from the start. And Violet does point out, though, that their parents actually never mentioned Monty, and you can see that Monty does get a bit upset about this, but he's astonished at the news. He's not mad at them, but he's obviously, surprised that they never told him about, they never told the kids about him, and you definitely get the sense there's a lot more secrets going on with his character, but this very well sets up his character. It shows how different this episode is going to be and perfectly acclimates us to this new change of scenery that works extremely well in the episode. And that's really the driving force of the entire episode, is how much more hopeful the tone really is, and how things are a lot less dark and saddening, at least, for the first, 20 or so minutes. But Monty explains that they all grew up together and that he is a world-famous herpetologist, and he then calls for his assistant, Gustave. But as we know, Gustave, was drowned. He drowned in the pool and to collect the cake plates, but then remembers that Gustave left him a letter of resignation and left without saying goodbye in person. So Monty has no idea that he actually died and that he was poisoned. And you can't help but think, did Gustave actually write the letter, or was that one of Count Olaf's henchmen? I'm pretty sure it's the latter, that it was definitely one of Count Olaf's henchmen that did that. But Monty shows the Baudelaires an important scientific collection, his reptile room filled with exotic creatures. That's why the episode's called The Reptile Room, and he then shows them his most recent acquisition, which he's going to take to the Herpetologist Society as his newest discovery, and he's named it the Incredibly Deadly Viper, and it lunges out of the cage at Sonny, and it seems to be complete, this Deadly Viper is actually okay, we see, because Lemony tells us that, he tells us to come play a cup of tea, he assures the viewer that Sonny doesn't die, but tells us immediately that Monty's gonna die, and yes, I get that Lemony is gonna spoil things, and that he's not in the best state of mind, but the fact the episode tells us that Monty dies eventually it doesn't really do anything for the episode. It's supposed to provide us with this awareness that this isn't going to last forever, and that this is definitely still an unfortunate tale, and that the hope we're seeing is not going to stay permanent, which we know, obviously. This is only episode 3. But the fact they tell us that Monty dies, it really does affect a lot of the episode. And that's my one major problem, is that telling us that Monty dies, it does overall affect the energy of the episode. The episode from this point on was so energetic, it was so different from the first two, and having Lemony reveal this, it just made the episode a lot more dour, and it didn't need to be as dour as it really was. I get that the show's supposed to be dark, but I just don't really feel like we need to know that Monty was going to die. It would have been more surprising if we found out, but we'll get into that. But the snake encoils Sonny. Monty laughs. He assures Violet and Klaus that the incredibly deadly viper is one of the friendliest and least dangerous animals in the world. Why it's called the deadly viper, I have no idea, but he puts it back into his cage, explains he gave his discovery the wrong name because he plans to play a joke in the society as payback for years of ridicule, we find out. They haven't really taken him seriously, so he wants to kind of use this to goat them into thinking that this is a deadly animal when it's really not. And he says he has a cabinet full of deadly venom samples from snakes, and he takes the Baudelaires to his scientific library. He implores them to read the books and admits that he always wanted a family. And the look on Klaus's face is just a look of bewilderment. And it really, again, goes with that driving, hopeful tone this episode has. And if Lemony had not said that line, it would have stayed hopeful. Would have still been, really interesting to see this hopeful tone. And again, you can really see that he really does have everything. But as we can tell, it is definitely just way too good to be true. So he admits that he always wanted a family but didn't have time. He says there are a few dangerous reptiles, but if the children get to know the reptiles, no harm will come to them in the reptile room, because the reptiles are completely safe. They won't harm them. As long as nothing bad happens, then they should be completely fine. So later, Monty goes into town. The children then sit in the reptile room talking to the broken-hearted crocodile, even though it can't understand them, and Klaus wonders why their parents never mentioned Monty, because he seems like such a nice guy. There really doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with him, and more as if there was a more sinister reason for silence, and why they sent their children to the beach on the day the house burned down. And I like the way that Klaus is really starting to question this stuff, because that's stuff that we've questioned since the first episode. Why would these two parents, who have 3 great kids, who haven't done anything wrong, and, were loving parents, why would they send their kids to the beach? Why didn't they let them accompany them on this trip? What was really going through their heads there? So I like the way that Klaus is really starting to use his head and think about that. But Monty returns, says that he's going into town to pick up some supplies. Then tonight they'll go see their first movie together. Even though he doesn't know what they're showing, he just wants to take them to a movie, and he wants to take them there a lot. And Violet hints at the fact their parents never actually took them to the movies, which definitely does make us start to think that maybe their family wasn't that great. I'm definitely getting the sense their parents maybe weren't that great to them. They just kind of thought they were. But once Monty leaves, Klaus shows Violet the original plans for Monty's landscaping, and among them is a hedge maze with an eye at the center, the same eye that Olaf had tattooed on his ankle. This I thought was very interesting. Klaus worries that there's something sinister going on, and that Monty's not, as perfect as he seems. There's definitely more going on there, and immediately we see that that's definitely true when we hear the doorbell ring, and this man named Stefano shows up, and it's pretty clear that this is definitely Count Olaf. I mean, he's doing the best he can to hide his accent and not show who he is, but as we know, Count Olaf is a terrible actor. He's really bad at this, and they can very well tell this is Stefano, and I love that it literally took Klaus 3 seconds. Like, he knew that was Count Olaf, and the children then realize who he is, but Olaf ignores their accusations. When they try to slam the door shut, he blocks it with a knife, drops the pretense, and threatens to cut off one of Sonny's toes. He says that the Baudelaire parents were brave in their day, but are dead now, and all that is left of them is their good fortune. And again, he's still there to get their fortune. So a clock goes off, startling Olaf, and the kids run. Olaf then grabs Klaus momentarily, causing him to drop the device. Klaus then grabs it. The children run into the reptile room, closing the vault door just in time, and it's a pretty intense scene because you don't really know. I mean, you know that obviously the kids are going to be okay, but you definitely get the sense that Count Olaf is back for them, and Monty then pulls him outside. Olaf goes to greet him, pretending to be Stefano again, and Olaf claims the scientific society sent him to be Monty's new assistant, even though Monty didn't ask for an assistant. So obviously, this is something that Count Olaf is quite surprised about. Monty didn't ask for any sort of assistance, so immediately he's starting to be a little bit suspicious of who this guy really is, and he accepts the story, escorts him inside, tells him to go up to his new room, and at this point you're thinking, how could Monty be this stupid? Why would he just let this random guy in? But you eventually see there's a lot more going on than we think. So he then enters the reptile room, pretending to open up all the locks while Olaf secretly watches, and Monty finally turns the secret doorknob, goes in. Now, seeing Olaf watch the door open, it definitely does a very good job of foreshadowing things. Like, the show in general does a very good job of foreshadowing. This is a very good example of that. Not what Lemony said. That is in-your-face foreshadowing that was not done well at all. This is how they should have done it. And the children then play along. He takes them out to the truck to get his supplies. Once they're alone, Monty apologizes for not thinking their enemies would be there so quickly. He refuses to call the authorities because Olaf would kill them before they got there, so he warns that Olaf doesn't work alone. Monty says that they will now invite Olaf to come to the movies with them and keep watching him for now. Basically, they go inside. He drops a heavy glass reading lamp on Monty's head from his upper window, acting like there's nothing wrong with that it's completely normal, but he apologizes, goes inside, and he insists that it was no accident. And Klaus says that they should call the authorities, and Monty says that he minored in criminology, and he knows what he's doing. So at this point, we think that, okay, Monty actually knows that this is Count Olaf, and that Count Olaf is a terrible person, that Count Olaf is coming after them. It seems like Monty, he's actually getting this through his head, and again, it shows that Monty might actually be somewhat smart about this. But knowing that Monty's gonna die, again, it doesn't really do anything. It just kind of makes things, it makes things very predictable. We know definitely what's gonna happen. So, as they eat takeout, Olaf says that he was going to stay in and read up on poisonous venoms, and Monty insists that he come and admits that he's uncomfortable leaving his reptiles alone with a stranger because they're not used to, working with strangers. They're so used to being trained by Monty, and when they're with strangers, who knows what could happen. So Olaf agrees, but says that he needs to make a phone call before they leave. He tells his troop, and he drops a facade, tells his troop where they're going, and when he's briefly alone with the Baudelaires, assures them that he isn't going to harm them on purpose, but accidents happen all the time, and that is the perfect example of that menacing nature that Neil Patrick Harris does such a great job with. And I love, again, just like the second episode, how it's not constant. We don't always hear Olaf saying, "Oh, I'm gonna kill these kids." It's only ever so often. It's only sometimes he tells them, "Look, I'm gonna kill you if you don't do this." It just makes him that much more terrifying, and they're doing a really good job with going into, Olaf's head like that. He really is this vile, evil man, but at the same time, you can definitely tell, how he feels and things like that. You can tell why he wants the finances and where they're really going with that. Again, I like that he sometimes, is funny, but he really is this vile, dark, very dark, foul man. I like the direction they're going with that. I think it really does work well with Count Olaf, and that's something that's benefiting Neil Patrick Harris as an actor really, really well, at least so far. So at the theater, the group goes inside. Olaf offers to get popcorn for everyone, his treat, but once the others go into the theater, Olaf actually approaches the henchman of indeterminate gender, working as a food attendant, and this didn't really make a ton of sense, how they were able to completely hijack the theater and, get everyone to, believe who they really were. We know that Olaf's not that great of an actor, so how are they able to do this? And inside, Monty directs the children to the best seats, says that there's more to a movie than a movie, we find out. He wants to go to the movie to learn something, he's not just there for the movie, and I thought it was interesting, an interesting thing that he said, that he doesn't just want to see the movie, he actually wants to, learn something from it and, get some sort of lesson and things like that. And he makes the Baudelaires promise that if he leaves during the showing, they should act as if nothing is amiss. Because, again, he does not trust Stefano whatsoever. He doesn't want them to act like that he's coming after him or anything. And obviously, he is trying to get, intel on who Stefano really is. So Olaf joins them. The movie begins. It's subtitled, even though it's in English, and Monty takes out a cipher device to figure out what the subtitles really mean. And the lead actor and now this was very weird, the lead actress and actor are Jacqueline and Gustav. Now, how they were able to film this in that time, I don't really know, but the subtitles spell out danger, take the children on the SSS Prospero. So we quickly realize that this movie isn't just a movie, it's kind of a warning. It's trying to send him a message on where to take the kids, and Olaf notices and watches. He goes to get some more popcorn, deliberately blocking Monty's view, obviously because he doesn't want the kids to go on the ship. He doesn't want, Monty to know where to take the kids. That's something that he wants to keep as hidden as he can. So the white-faced woman or disguised attends to the snack bar. Olaf tells them that they'll capture Monty at the cinema. He warns them that they don't know who's trying to send a message. So Olaf goes back in, and Monty excuses himself to go to the restroom, and as he leaves, Olaf goes after him, but the children protest, and he sits back down. So the white-faced woman sees Monty go past past, they yank down a curtain, and in the booth, the ticket seller and Monty splice in the earlier scene from the film. Olaf looks up, he glares at the projector while Monty uses a ciphering device to make out that he's supposed to go to Peru, and he tells the ticket seller that he needs 4 tickets on the Prospero. The seller tells Monty to meet him at the ticket booth, and when Monty meets him there, he collects the tickets, goes back to the theater, and again, we're constantly terrified here that something bad is going to happen to Monty. So the woman throws the curtain over him, drags him away without anyone seeing them in the theater, and basically, no one sees him in the theater. So then Lemony tells us that while, Olaf and his henchmen were plotting things, they weren't really the only ones that were completely unnoticed. We see mother and father have actually escaped their captivity. They figure that they'll be with the children by bedtime. They open a vault door and they find themselves at a waterfall in Peru. So for some reason they're in Peru. I don't really know why Peru was the choice to, put them, but, go figure, whatever. I don't know what the plan is. So the movie then ends, the children realize that Monty actually never came back. They go out to call for him. Olaf follows. He leads them out, and they do find Monty waiting for them. He's back there, and Monty says the movie will require some further explanation. He has them wait in the car just to explain them what's really all about. He assures them it's his job and his delight to keep them safe, and they go. So Monty then tells Olaf that he's actually a wretched person and a bad actor, believing that he's a spy from the Herpetological Society. He doesn't think that, and that's what he thinks he really was. He thought he was actually a spy this entire time. He didn't think that he was actually, Count Olaf. He didn't even know his real name. So Olaf drops his accent. Monty orders him to leave. Olaf then walks off, secretly chuckling, basically because he was the smarter one in all of this, that Monty actually didn't believe him, and he knew that, who he was and actually was. So the women are tied up in the back of the van. Olaf leaves. Olaf actually leaves them there, we see, which again just shows how terrible a person he is. So Monty then drives the Baudelaires back to his manor, says that Olaf will never bother them again. The authorities are on their way, and he explains that they're going to Peru and is filled with answers. So they agree to go with him, and they're going to go, basically, I guess, to Peru to reunite with their parents, which is not going to happen. So they arrive at the manor. Monty shows them the route that they'll take, says that they can still have the life that their parents wanted for them. He tucks them in, goes downstairs. It's kind of a nice moment. You see they genuinely have someone who cares for them. But then we get to the ending, and this ending was kind of dumb, I'm not going to lie. He notices the reptile room door is open. He goes inside. Someone or something attacks him, and that is the way this episode ends. Let's just get in this episode and where I think we're going to go. So overall, guys, even though the ending I thought was quite predictable and honestly kind of cheesy, this still was a very well done episode, mainly because of, like I said, the hope that this episode really provided. There was a lot of resounding hope in this episode, even though Lemony had to, be a dick and tell us that Monty was going to die. The hope throughout this episode was definitely earned because, we had 2 very dark episodes where so many terrible things happened. I like that we had hope throughout this one, that maybe this could actually go well for the Baudelaires. Maybe Monty could actually care for them. Maybe they actually have found a guardian that actually is going to help them in the way they need him to, and they're going to utilize things. Even though they can't have Justice Strauss, maybe Monty is just as good as Justice Strauss. And we definitely saw here, there's a lot more going on with him. Monty definitely, we don't know why. First of all, why did the parents never tell them about Monty? That doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. If there's, he's tied to something, maybe he's part of the VFD. We know the VFD is still in play. We don't know what that is. We know it's a secret organization, but there's something going on with that secret organization. We don't really know what that's all about, so I think he definitely could be tied to that. We don't really know. But why are the parents in Peru? That's something that I definitely did not really understand. Why are they in Peru? What's really going on there? Now we know that the kids are not going to reunite with their parents because the show would be over if that happened. There's no way that Violet, Klaus, and Sunny are going to reunite with their parents, before this season ends. There's no way that's happening. The show would be completely over if that happened. There's no way that's happening. So I don't really know where we're going with that or why that was the plan, but we'll have to see what happens there. I think that definitely is going to be interesting. And now Monty. Monty, I'm assuming, is dead because Lemony tells us that he died. And that's my biggest problem with the episode. One, that Monty did in fact think that Count Olaf did outsmart Monty. I thought that was interesting to see. But at the same time, I didn't really think it went with Monty's character. Monty seemed like he knew what he was doing. He seemed like he was trying to thwart Count Olaf's plan. And him being a spy didn't really make a ton of sense to me. Why did he think that this was a spy? I didn't really get that well. Why would he think that? And I just felt they could have fleshed it out more. But my biggest problem is that, Lemony told us that that Monty's gonna die, and that really made a lot of the ending very, very anticlimactic. And I mean, like, super anticlimactic. Like, it could have been honestly a surprising ending, that something happened to Monty, that he was attacked by something. That could have been a good ending, but we knew it was coming because Lemony had to tell us. And I get that the show is that way, and that Lemony is someone who's a very unreliable narrator and isn't really that great at what he does. And yes, he does tell us what things mean and things are from his perspective and things like that, but I just felt like we didn't need to know that Monty was going to die. If the show didn't tell us that, it could have been a lot more interesting. Now, it's also clear that Jacqueline is definitely still out there. Olaf knows that she's trying to plot against them. And I like the way we see she is definitely trying to help the kids. Like, she wants them to reunite with their parents and tell them, what's really going on here. It seems like she holds a lot of the secrets to what's going on, and I definitely can see possibly them meeting up with Jacqueline as the next person they meet up with. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I definitely could see that going on. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. I thought the Reptile Room in general was very interesting to watch. I like that room overall. I thought that played a pretty good role in the episode, and again, it was a much different kind of scenery from the first episode. All the dark landscapes and very sort of like gothic type backgrounds were replaced here with very vibrant and very colorful Disney kind of like colors. I mean, everything about this, it felt very much like it's all happening too fast, and that's because it was a lot of false hope, and I like the way the episode really hinted at that. I thought that was very interesting. But of course, also, what is up with that tattoo? We keep seeing that eye tattoo and everything. Someone, there's something going on with that tattoo that points to something much more sinister going on. Klaus hints at it. We know that something's going on there, and Lemony's hinted at it as well, so definitely something is going on with that. We don't really know what that's about. Overall, guys, was still a really great episode. Even though I didn't love the ending and I didn't love that Lemony had to tell us everything that was going on, the show is still just as strong. It was very funny. I thought we had some very good performances here, and it was so different from the first two episodes that, in general, I still really did enjoy it. I think the show, in general, is just a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it overall. There's now only, surprisingly, I can't believe there's only 5 episodes left, but yeah, we only have like 5 episodes left, and there's a lot that can happen there, but we'll have to see what happens there. But overall, guys, I still really did enjoy this episode. And at the end of the day, I am going to give A Series of Unfortunate Events Season 1, Episode 3, The Reptile Room Part 1, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. So over, guys, my review of Series of Unfortunate Events. The most guys thought of this episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Did you like the ending? Did you like Monty as a character? I really did like the actor. I thought he did a pretty great job in this episode. But that's for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Supergirl, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.